Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Asad Lalji. Welcome to Avid Online. Please refer to the chat box for more information on Avid Learning and our partners for this evening's discussion. Avid Online was launched on the 1st of April 2020 as a direct response to the pandemic. So now we're 19 months young, and over 280 programs later, we continue to champion and bring to our audiences the best of the arts and culture, staying true to our mantra, as always, that learning never stops. Since we have not been able to welcome you into the Royal Opera House physically since the pandemic, we have been curating and presenting programs across the performing arts through Avid Online. Music has always been the soul of our curatorial philosophy, and tonight we present the next edition with our partners, the Indian Music Experience Museum, Fatatos, and the Royal Opera House, Mumbai. This series looks at different paradigms of extraordinary exchanges of culture and tradition. The last two editions covered fusion of disparate art forms. The first session, a lecture demonstration, explored the canvas of creating fusion music. The speakers spoke about their genre defying work on blending Indian classical music with Western music. The second edition explored a French play that was a fusion of cultures, costumes, ideas, performances, and art forms from India and France. And this brings me to our evening session, Across Cultures, the Universal Language of Music, that aims to examine the influences and potentials of blending disparate art forms to create a new, artistically curated, and holistic experience. Allow me to introduce our speakers for the evening and give them a warm virtual welcome. Sarod Maestros, Aman Ali Bangash and Ayaan Ali Bangash. Multiple Grammy Award winner, classical guitarist Sharon Isbin. They will be in conversation with music journalist Amit Gurbaxani. For more about our speakers, please refer to their very impressive bios that have been posted in the chat section. The speakers will explore the unique treasures of their own artistic traditions and discuss their latest album, Strings of Peace, as well as find common ground in melodic ragas and harmonic scales. Please note the session will last 90 minutes, includes a short pre-recorded performance and a 15-minute Q&A in which Amit will be taking questions. So please keep them submitted throughout the session and keep posting them in the Q&A box. On that note, thank you once again for tuning in. Over to you, Amit, to level set, and look forward to a fascinating session. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Asad, and thank you so much to Avid for this opportunity, not only to speak with such eminent musicians, but also to talk about an album that I think that is so, even though it was released in May 2020, it is so relevant and it's really proven so timeless. I was listening to it and, I've been listening to it for days now, ever since, this session was, I was asked to moderate it. And it's one of those albums that, it just sort of, I don't think there could be a more apt name, Strings for Peace, and I wanted to firstly start off by asking all the musicians here, how did this project come together? I mean, from what I've been reading and hearing, the seeds of the album were actually planted over a decade ago, and it all came together. And I think we owe thanks to a gentleman called Kyle Paul, right, who helped bring this all together. So, Sharon, could you just tell us, about that email you received years ago? And,
Yes, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and to welcome all of your viewers. I'm here in New York City, and this actually began 12 years ago in 2009 when I received an email from the Maestro Amjad Ali Khan, who was very interested in forging a collaboration with me. So we met that year and forged a friendship also with his magnificent sons, virtuosi, the Ali Bangash brothers, Aman and Ayaan. And 10 years later, we actually performed the music of Amjad Ali Khan on tour in India and made a recording in April 2019. So really a 10-year period. And during that time, I was able to go to concerts of theirs in New York City and meet with them several times. And each time there would be the expression of desire from the Khan family of doing a collaboration, but it really required having a connection to somebody who knew jazz, could improvise, could notate North Indian classical music, had a knowledge of classical guitar. And that was later in 2018 and a little before when Amjad Ali Khan met Kyle Paul at the university in Bloomington, Indiana, where he was giving his residency. And that really was the key to all of this beginning to happen. And then suddenly a series of ragas appeared in my inbox in November and December of 2018. And I thought, my God, these are absolutely beautiful. They had created a sample for me to listen to as well as to look at the scores. And I remember Ayaan telling me, well, that's good because we've already booked a tour to do with you in a couple of months in India. And I said, really, couldn't it wait a little longer so I would have time to digest all of this? And he said, nope, the halls were available, Mumbai, Calcutta, and Delhi, and let's just do it. So I had to literally change my life around, move mountains, and make it possible to learn all of this and to join them on what was to become a really extraordinary collaboration and one of the most joyous ones in my life.
Yeah, and you know, you all even performed it, I believe, at the Opera House. Which
Yes.
Is, and so Ayaan, you know, could you tell us a little bit about, you know, the name? You know, like I said, it's such an apt name, and I believe when you all performed it, it was called Peace Tribe, right? The ensemble was called Peace Tribe, and yeah, and String to Peace, and you know, it's come to have such a relevance, that name. You know, just in the immediate months after it got released. So, could you tell us a little bit about the concept?
Yeah, sure. I think to start with, it's such a pleasure and an honor to be here and be in the august company of such wonderful artists. I think Sharon pretty much covered the journey of the project, and it literally is something that we wanted, you know, to do for so long. And there was like this, there's a time and place for everything. I think this is just one of those things. And we were so excited when we were recording the music. And, you know, when we named it Strings for Peace, little did we know that, you know, the world was going to just turn around the way it did. And it was a time when one had to look within and look deeper more than ever, you know. So, and music perhaps being such a powerful part of who we are as human beings made all the difference. And so we had such a memorable tour in India. And you're right, it was called Peace Tribe then. But that time it was just Sharon, my brother, and me. And then when my father's involvement happened, then the project was called Strings for Peace. And, you know, we were so wanting this to happen for so long. And like Sharon said, during my father's residency in Bloomington, you know, he had a lot of instrumentalists who were taking that residency. And it just so happened that I got talking with Kyle, and we were able to put everything together. And Sharon, of course, made the score her own. She makes her guitar sing, literally, you know, and it's so inspiring to play with Sharon, to be on stage with Sharon. It's truly an honor and a pleasure. So yes, in Mumbai, it was Opera House, and we did Delhi and Kolkata. So the times weren't easy. I mean, when the album came out, we didn't know what the planet was going through. But everything happened virtually. All, you know, the release, the promotions, all of that. But it's wonderful that we were able to get back on stage 2 years after the pandemic at Carmore in July. And now this coming week, we perform in Florida. These were all concerts that we had to do before the lockdown. But God willing, there are many more lined up for next year. So it's just wonderful. And I mean, I just have gratitude to the universe for this project, and to the fact that the world is gradually healing again.
Yeah, and you know, your father, the legendary Ustad Amjad Ali Khan, I mean, he's composed all of these songs and these rags. And Aman, I wanted to ask you, you know, the names of the tracks are so evocative. I mean, they're all based on different rags, but you know, there's By the Moon, for instance, the opening track that you play on. I mean, like, how do you all? I think that's very interesting for, like, you know, the audience to also know, how do you all sort of come up with these names. They're so evocative. You just look at some of them. There's Love Avalanche and Romancing the Earth, and Sacred Evenings. I mean, they tell you they're sort of like a hint, a glimpse of what you're listening to, but they're really sort of like, how do you all conceptualize these names?
Firstly, greetings to everyone. With all due respect, it's a pleasure and honor to be on this platform and to share this time with all of you. And I think we're very fortunate, Ayaan, Bhai, me, and my father also, to be able to collaborate with the maestro like Sharon herself. Like, she's amazing and a lovely human being, amazing person. And that is a very important part, when you collaborate with anyone, to have a spiritual connection to start with. I mean, I would like to believe as a musician, because I think music is one thing, and then the other thing is to connect on a karmic level nicely, and to feel positive about each other, and to see the other person doing better than you. It's that's the connection. Coming back to the question you asked me, Bhai, so we don't name the rags and play on it. We don't name the piece and play on it. We play the piece and then we name it.
Yeah.
It's like seeing a baby and saying, oh, wow, if it's a boy, this is the name. If it's a girl, that's the name. It should be like that. So when you talk about By the Moon, which my piece, as you said, it's based out of Indian classical rag called Behag, which is a night rag. So it was not because it's night, it's the moon. We just said it's moon. It's a moonlight thing, romancing the earth. So it's all to do. These names come out of the vibe, or the vibe of the piece, basically. And it was a collective decision to name it, and yes, it does connect with the common audience. When I say common, in terms of people who are not into the technicalities of music, Western or Indian music, a person who just bought a ticket or just there to enjoy music, they connect much better, 100%.
Yeah.
They can connect. There's a visual attached to the audio.
Yeah,
basically in their mind. So it works like that, I guess.
Yeah, sure. And all three of you are no strangers to collaboration. You all have worked, across a diverse range of artists across genres and styles. With Sharon, this was the first time you were sort of collaborating with Indian classical musicians, right? Having already collaborated with a whole range of Western classical and Western musicians. Could you touch upon maybe some of the challenges that were there to sort of have this collaboration? I think the main challenge, like you mentioned, was of notation, which was solved. But was there anything else that when you sort of had to, or was that was essentially the pathway to have have this come to bring this to fruition?
Well, fortunately, I'd been listening to North Indian classical music since I was a college student, and certainly admired it as being on the outside. I never imagined I'd have the opportunity and the honor of participating in it. And one of the things that is so unique about the approach that Amjad Ali Khan and his sons take is that they are able to notate the score in such a way that I can bypass many years of study and immerse myself immediately in the music of what they are doing and what they have conceived. And that is a very special approach that makes it possible to have a collaboration like this from two different worlds and cultures. One of the things that is special as well about the music is there's a lot that's not on the page that you cannot notate. The embellishments, for example, and the slides and the little glisses and so forth. So just working with Ayaan and company in India a few days before our tour made it possible for me to experiment with different ideas and say, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And just let it all kind of emerge. And I think for me, that came from many years of working with jazz musicians, working with percussionists, because of course we play with tabla in this, and on our recording, Strings for Peace, we have the honor of being joined by Amit on tabla. So having worked for more than 20 years with percussionists from Brazil, Tiago de Mello, on an album I did called Journey to the Amazon and other albums, it was natural for me to be able to merge with the quality of the tapped instrument. And also his type of percussion was handheld as well as being the case in the Indian music. So embellishment, that came from collaborations for many years with jazz musicians like Romero Lubambo and Stanley Jordan. And then the idea, believe it or not, of coming from Bach. I spent 10 years studying with the great Bach scholar of keyboard, Rosalind Turek. And together we edited all the Bach lute suites, and I recorded all the Bach lute suites. Those are all available. If you go to my website. And that whole sense of different centuries coming together, doing folk music, doing jazz, working with folk musicians from Joan Baez to Mark O'Connor on fiddle, country fiddle. Somehow, believe it or not, this informed my ability to, in a very short time, immerse myself in the beautiful music of Amjad Ali Khan and his sons, and to be able to bring to it my own voice, but somehow connect to that whole tradition. You think of even Spanish music and the Roma coming from India and traversing over the centuries, different cultures in Europe and landing in Spain. And even that music informs part of what is North Indian classical music.
Yeah, and I heard an interview of yours where you sort of were talking about this sort of moment of realization you had while performing the music, right? I mean, it was like...
I think that was in Kolkata you felt it, Sharon, right? I think
yes,
the first time, yes.
The first time I was opening the concert of our tour, and I was playing a work that I had performed many, many times, hundreds of times, Asturias by Isaac Albéniz, the Spanish composer from the late 19th century, early 20th century, and to be able to suddenly hear it with new ears and a new vision was something that astonished me. But I was, in a way, having a visceral experience of the journey that I had taken to India for the first time, and feeling the music of that culture somehow being reflected and a part of the DNA of Spanish music. And it made sense when you consider the trajectory of the Roma into the evolution of flamenco in Spain and the gypsies there, and how all of that really comes together in a way that just shows the oneness of humanity.
Yes, and you know, when you hear this music, when you hear this album, it's so seamless to coming together. I mean, I think that's what's so incredible about it, right? I mean, you can't, you'd never guess that this is music that's really performed. These are instruments that are really performed together. This is really one of the first times you're sort of hearing something like this. And I think that's amazingly incredible. And, you know, Ayaan, you know, they often say about Indian classical music that, you know, it sort of, Indian classical musicians can't change their music because it's, you know, there's these restrictions, there's these rules, but they can collaborate with anyone. They have the ability to collaborate with, you know, any possible sort of genre or format. And I know that that's been one area where, again, your father has been working in that space of, you know, bringing together diverse musical forms with Indian classical music. And could you just talk a little bit about, you know, elaborate about that and all the different things that you guys have been doing over the years?
You see, Indian classical music, as you know, the tradition, it's an oral tradition. So what we learn or the way it's taught, it's, you know, everything is just spontaneous. It happens at that moment. But having said that, this culture in the Western world of reading and playing music, and actually playing it to the ethos of the composer's vision, I think that is such a big challenge. And that's something I've always admired the Western classical world. So obviously, you see, there's no rule book or formula to a collaboration. And by and large, you know, end of the day, there have been so many collaborations. But I think it's very important to know where you're coming from and where you want to go. I think that's important, because collaborations, it's a personal journey for each artist collaborating. So we have always, the kind of work my brother and I have done, or a lot of the work my father's done, we've always enjoyed coming out of our comfort zone and doing things as well. Because when you actually have a written score, it's challenging for us because it's not something we regularly do. But then it's a challenge for us, and that's how you collectively put a bouquet of flowers together. When you're on stage or when you're recording, I think the intention is for the bouquet to look beautiful, not for every flower to come out or shine out. So I think there's an overall kind of collective effort it takes for any kind of collaboration to work. And like my brother said, most importantly, the hearts have to meet. I think when the hearts meet, then music flows. Because end of the day, our music is who we are. So it's all reflecting. So like Sharon also mentioned that many times, even when we have a written score, the execution and the energy and the ethos of every concert, it's very different. It picks up, the inspiration around you, the atmosphere around you, everything put together. So you become a part of the whole process. And we've been very fortunate. My brother and I, we've done a lot of interesting collaborations with electronic music, with so many orchestras. We played my father's concerto, and Strings for Peace definitely has been one of the most satisfying and emotional journeys, if I may, because I think so much happened in 10 years or 15 years of knowing Sharon, then getting the music together, and then then the world changing and the world now coming back. So there was a lot going on there. And I think all of that kind of, for me, is associated with this collaboration.
Yeah, and I mean, it was obviously meant to be, because like it was, like Sharon mentioned, way back in 2009 was this desire to collaborate with her, and it's finally come together.
Yes.
Yeah. And Aman, you sort of, we talked about sort of the challenges, but like, were there any similarities or surprises that emerged while you all were working on this project?
I mean, as my brother mentioned, and so did Sharon. So obviously, firstly, again, I'll repeat that the connection is very important for the music to flow. As we say, that instrument has to be tuned first to be able to play on it. So I would say nature is like tuning an instrument. If your natures connect, everything else, 70% of everything is settled. It's only the 30% of music that is left. You know what I'm saying? So I feel the main commonality was obviously to start with respect for the music. Like the respect Ayaan and I have for Western classical music. I've always been a big fan. And I'm also been very scared of it because I've not really understood the staff notation part of it. And I feel it's amazing how, musicians can read and perform with that much of emotion, the same emotion that the composer wrote it with, The guitar and the sarod, I think, are from the same family as it's a string instrument, right? The only difference is that in guitar, I think you're using your fingertips, whereas in sarod, you're using your fingernails. So that's the only difference, but it's a strummed instrument. And it's just like you're playing with your cousin. It's a cousin instrument. It's like that, it's just so similar. And at the same time, you're so intrigued by the technicalities of guitar itself as an instrument. When you see it, I'm like, wow, how's this played? And it's so beautiful. So so the commonality is that it's a strum and a string instrument. And whenever any project is done, the main thing is respect, more respect for the other musicians on the platform, on the same platform. Because I feel music only flows when you are honest and positive and you want the best for the other than yourself. So when I perform, let's say with my father or with Sharon or with my brother, in my head, I'm not just performing with them, I'm also accompanying them. It's also giving a good reaction sometimes can give the other person a good action. It's not always giving action and hoping for a reaction. Sometimes if you give a good reaction to an artist, you can get the most beautiful action in return. So it's all about I mean, I don't want to sound, I don't want to repeat myself, but the thing is that it's all about, again, positivity, being humility, and and being patient. That's all it is. Because music, I mean, we've had many in the past, till many are here, and many will come in the future who are excellent musician. But I don't think it stays. What really stays is your nature, what is which takes the music across to other people.
Yeah.
Interestingly,
Attitude.
I think India was the association of the guitar was always, with rock and roll or with jazz. But when these shows happened with Sharon, I think perhaps for the first time, the Indian music lovers saw the classical dignity and grace of the guitar. And in fact, that also brings me to the point that I was even looking for people in India to help us develop the score, because there's so many guitarists and students of music in India as well. But I realized, which maybe I did communicate to Sharon, that I'm having a very tough time, getting the score put together, and which was the reason of, the 10-year the 10-year period when I was missing, from this project. So that's when I realized that this is a whole different ocean, the classical world of guitar, and which was really a revelation to me as well. And then obviously, again, then you don't have Sharon Isbin's coming to the planet every day. I mean, she's someone who's actually done a concerto with the guitar, And so these things were really learning windows for me. And then, then I realized how developed the world of classical guitar was as well, which was really a learning. And so what I'm saying is that I think it was the first time that the Indian audience saw this kind of an interaction where we were in the genre of classical music from the West and from India, and we sailed with keeping the DNAs of both the cultures active.
Yeah, and like you said, this is a revelation, because for a lot of people, like you said, I mean, you don't think of when this in India, especially when you think of guitar, your associations are directly with rock music.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, and sort of ironically enough, you all also did a project with a very popular rock musician that also came out. Was recorded before the pandemic and came around. It came out sort of recorded before and came out during, with Joe Walsh, your album Prayers. So, I mean, do you want to talk about the diversions of these two, either of you, Aman or Ayaan, just talk about the diversion of having these, working with two extremely, two of the sort of best guitarists in the world, but on very different projects. Yeah. Aman?
Yeah, Ayaan, you can say.
Yeah, well, I think you've pretty much answered the question. I mean, we were very blessed, very fortunate that it just so happened that, literally one of the two best guitarists in the world, we were able to connect with. But both the projects had such a different vibe, a different ethos. Of course, with Sharon, I mean, the journey was so different. And with Maestro Joe Walsh, what had happened that again, he had a great fascination for the Sarod, and he wanted to own one Sarod, and he was in Mumbai, and that's where we met. He reached out, and we had a lovely meeting that turned into a jam session. Again, this was a few years ago, and then it so happened that during one of our tours in the US, we were in LA, and he has a beautiful studio in his house, and the recording happened there. And again, it was ironic. My father wanted to record the song We Shall Overcome, and that too, eventually when the album came out, it was a tribute to doctors and frontline workers. So it was just a learning experience for my brother and me, just to be in the space of these greats interacting. We were literally like compounders in the hospital, just observing, learning, and and just feeling blessed to be a part of all these great projects.
Yeah, and I think humility is one of the qualities that I think everybody loves about the two of you. Sharon, I wanted to ask you. We can't not discuss this, and I know it's a slightly obvious question, but y'all did have to sort of grapple with the idea of virtual performances, and I believe y'all even did one virtual performance last year in July, right? I mean, for you, what was that process like? And like, how has it been? I mean, now finally live performances are back, and you all did one, I believe, in July, right? And finally got to play this music together. But just like, how's it been for you to sort of actually do the virtual performances? And it must have been quite strange initially.
Well, it's certainly much better being in person with an audience, and that we're all reminded of that. But one of the biggest challenges for me is that I'd never used a webcam before. I have done many, many video projects and even a film that was called Sharon, Isbin Troubadour, which is playing on Amazon and it's also on DVD and Blu-ray. But those have been always engineered by other people. I never used a webcam on my laptop, on a computer, so I had to learn the technology, find the technology. Everything was, of course, out of stock, and I had to find ways of getting it in time. I learned how to use the camera, get a microphone. I didn't even have that. So it was a crash course in technology for me in order to just be able to step up to the plate and be able to do what we're doing now. I'd never even heard of Zoom. I didn't know what it was. So
and even Zoom was new to me as well.
Yeah. So now, many dozens of Zooms later, okay, yeah, we know what that is. So it's just, you have to meet the challenge of whatever it is. And that was certainly an unexpected one.
Mm-hmm. But what about the performances themselves? I mean, was it very different? I mean, did you find it like challenging at all to sort of play it with screen, or because I find that most musicians find that one of the most hardest things to sort of come. I mean, you get used to it, but
Well, one of the challenges is how to play with a mask on, and the case of being in an audience where some people are masked and some aren't. I don't want to get sick, so even though I'm fully vaccinated, I'm going to be protecting myself. So I learned, first of all, that one of the most protective masks, I can't see my fingers after the 7th fret. Great. Then another one, it puffs in and out, and it's hard to breathe. Great, that's hard too. Then there's one I found when I performed this summer in Aspen. I did a solo recital, and I really needed to be able to see what I was doing. So that one isn't as protective, but it was okay because half the audience was exposed to the outdoors. And it was something that I joked with the audience because I cover it with a portion of my shiny metallic gold and maroon top. And they think, oh, that's cool. She's got this special mask thing, but it's just a covering. And I said, yeah, I somehow I knew years before there was going to be a pandemic. So I made sure that when my top was created and designed, that they made a face mask for me too. It's a joke, but they all thought that was very funny. Yes, we just have to figure out every little step of the way of things that we don't anticipate and find a way, as ever in life, to solve the problems and to grow and improve and just find joy anyway from the process.
Yeah,
I think virtual concerts were really need of the hour. I mean, frankly speaking, I mean, for any performing artist, we all know that, this kind of a medium is best for a concert hall. I mean, obviously you can hear live shows and all of that on YouTube. There's so much content anywhere available. But to communicate and that vibe in a concert hall, you cannot replace it. You can't replace it at all. So you can't replace it at all. So that's why it was challenging for all artists, and everyone found their own journey during the lockdown. We did a few virtual shows, but then we left it at few. It was not something we thought will I was happy to wait. I was happy to wait, and I was happy for the world to open up so that we're able to get back and do things the way we are most comfortable doing it.
Yeah, and even for the audience, I mean, I don't think anything can replace just being there in the moment, face to face. But Sharon, I also sort of read about something very interesting, and I think that for people who are not aware of it, I'd like if you could just share about the fact that you also don't shake hands, and to protect your, which is a very
Yes.
good thing to do as a classical guitarist. But also, amazingly enough, in India we have the namaste, which is also a greeting, but you don't necessarily. So that must have been like pretty, uh, I suppose, pretty fortuitous. But could you tell us a little bit about, how that happened to be, and that anecdote? I think it's pretty incredible of how you decided not to shake hands.
Well, I was in Los Angeles for a performance with orchestra, and I happened to be having lunch late that day in the hotel restaurant. And there was only one other table there with people, and I recognized who they were. It was Peter Serkin, the great pianist, and the widow of Takemitsu, and who was a Japanese composer, and then Oliver Newson, who was conducting that evening with the LA Phil. He's a composer from England. So I went over to say hello because I knew Ollie, and he's a big guy, and he reached down, and he grabbed my hand. I could feel the bones crunch, and I thought, oh my God, if a musician can do this, how can I expect anybody who's not to be able to appreciate the need to be sensitive about such things? And my hand hurt for the next 4 hours. Luckily, I recovered in time to be able to play the concert, but I resolved then and there I'd never shake hands again. And actually, I was kind of relieved with that decision because it's a great way of passing germs, and who wants that? You see people cough and then shake hands, and next thing you know, you're sick. We don't want that. So for the last, I would say 25 years, I've not been shaking hands. And for the last 20 years, I've been wearing an N95 mask on every single airplane for the entire duration of the flight because I really got tired of getting sick after flights. And this solved that problem. It began when SARS-1 happened, and I figured I'm going back and forth to Asia. I don't want to get this thing. I'll start wearing an N95 mask. And lo and behold, I discovered I no longer had to worry ever, not once. In the last 20 years of hundreds and hundreds of flights, never once did I get sick again from an airplane flight, all because I was wearing an N95 mask. So I was way ahead of the curve on this. And I often catch myself just kind of pinching to see if this is reality, to look out and I see, welcome to my world. Everybody's finally wearing a mask now. That's the way it should be.
So when we were touring in India, my brother and I, Sharon, we were all traveling, and Sharon said that, this is what I do. And she was wearing the mask and all that. And when the pandemic happened, my brother and I were talking. I said, oh my God, this is like Sharon was actually, in that Back to the Future car, and she knew what's going to happen, but anyway, I mean, it's a new chapter for the planet, and let's hope it's a brilliant second half after the intermission.
Yeah, and I think you said recently in an interview, one of you said this is an interval, and the next part of it is going to be bigger and better. And I think that's what we are all sort of like.
I mean, what have we all learned out of it? That is very important. This whole journey, this education by the universe, by gods, by everything. This they say in a very quiet room, you can even hear an ant walk. Mm-hmm. So silence and pain sometimes teaches us a lot more. I think so. I hope we all have gained somewhere or the other. And we'll be able to overcome all our shortcomings. I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. But could you talk about a little amount of what it was like to actually perform when you'll perform this in July? And I believe you'll have a concert this weekend in Florida, right? So now finally, audiences are getting to hear this music as it was meant to be heard. Apart from those who heard it in 2019 when you performed. What was the experience? I mean, just being on stage after so long, and like having played this music that you have been wanting to bring to people's ears.
For a musician, I think, and I cannot speak for everyone, but I think I could try and speak for everyone. Is that the fact that for a musician, performing on stage is one of the biggest celebrations. It's not to do with glamour, nothing to do with money. It is just a moment that only a musician understands, is to be on stage with his or her audience. The audience is your best friend by the end of it. Your instrument is, and so you're having a relationship with the audience, basically. So I think to be on stage and to get that love from people, when everyone's looking at you, they want to hear you. I think it's the biggest blessing on earth. It's the biggest celebration. And I'm so looking forward for this journey again, because where we left it was we were at the peak of a lot of beautiful, amazing projects for us, especially my father, Maestro Sharon, my brother Ayaan, and me. And I hope we can just take it again forward and do all those beautiful concerts. And there was so much, there was so much that we wanted to do, and we will do, God willing, now that the world has opened up. And if we are kind to Mother Earth, I'm sure she'll be nice to us. So I think as human beings, we have to appreciate and celebrate all these blessings that we are receiving again. So I'm really looking forward, and I'm praying to Almighty that this stays now. It's here
And who
to
knows,
stay.
there might be a sequel soon for Strings for Peace in time. Right,
That's
Sharon?
You never know. I was
You
afraid
never
you were
know,
going to say
yes.
there'd be a sequel to the pandemic, but I'm
Yeah,
glad that you're talking about music instead.
Oh, no.
God forbid, God forbid.
But one of the things I can say is that when we performed together in July, it was actually the first time any of us had been on stage again since the pandemic
Yes.
started. And there was such a feeling of excitement and gratitude. Believe me, none of us is going to ever take any of this for granted again. The idea of
Yeah.
playing for other people, having an audience, being able to be alive and to play music, all of that is just something we are all deeply appreciative of now in a new way. And it was so exciting because I was hearing you guys do things I'd never heard you do before. And there was just this sense of real connection to the cosmos and to the energy of the universe that was so remarkable. And I really think that having a period of deprivation really led to a sense of immersion and just excitement in a way that was newly born. And I'm sure we will carry that with us to all of our other performances.
Yeah, it's all a blessing.
Great.
I really
God
feel
willing.
it's all a blessing.
Yeah. And we are blessed as audiences to experience it. And I think that that's something that I don't think that audiences will or should take for granted, like we said, better and bigger is what's in the future. We've
Hopefully.
got a lot of questions. So I'm going to actually just switch over and maybe ask you guys some of those. One of the questions I think is for Ayaan. This is directed to you. It says, India has a rich history of musical instruments which is disappearing. How do you think we can bring them back? Okay, it's quite a broad question, but.
Well, I mean, we are very blessed to have so much talent in our country and so many instrumentalists. And it is a sad reality that, there are some rare instruments and the players, have passed or are not performing anymore for various reasons. And perhaps there are not many students of that particular instrument to take it forward. It's difficult for me to say what can be done, but I think the only way forward would be to perhaps engage students of music to more instruments at maybe school level, or even if they are going to a music institution at university level, and so that at least they are familiar with these instruments, familiar with the craft, and maybe, I don't know how involved the government can be in this aspect, but culture perhaps needs a little more focus, because these traditions of instruments or of so many art forms, every art form needs to be timeless. It needs to be documented. It needs to be protected. And if we don't have performers, at least we should have enough documentation to know how the instrument works, or how you get somewhere with it. So I think it's a process, and it needs a combination of perhaps government support and support at even artistic levels and organizational levels, and I hope musical organizations do something on these lines where we are able to protect art forms and artists as well.
Yeah, yeah. Aman, do you want to chip in about sort of this, especially when it comes to sort of classical music, where as you're the seventh generation and it's all oral tradition, so when it comes to things like the preservation, I mean, it is sort of like how do you do that, right? When it's unless you have somebody who's a performer,
Excuse me.
and when the reason why these instruments are becoming extinct is because there are no practitioners, right? So
Yeah, so that's what the answer is. Actually, you just gave it, Amit bhai, what you just said at the end. That it's not about the instrument;
mhm,
it's about the performer. If you love your teacher or you love your father, in my case, it's father and teacher. So if you love your teacher genuinely, you need to preserve his music. His music means first the music and then the medium, which is the instrument. Can be sarod, sitar, tabla, guitar, violin, whatever it is, right? So it is that commitment that you want to take forward the tradition. At least you can try. And when I say taking forward the tradition, I don't mean about popularity. I don't mean about any of those things. Those are secondary things. But the first thing is to preserve the art form. And the instruments that are now not being preserved or are dying down, I think there has to be an introspect or a retrospect for those musicians who feel that the instrument is going down. Is why is it going down? Where are we going? We always know where we are right in life, but we need to know where are we going wrong in life. Why is it the instrument not connecting with the common man? That is where you cannot sit down and think, oh, you know what? I'm a purist and people will come to me. It doesn't work like that. It's something in the middle that you're a purist, but at the same time, your purity of your music needs to transcend or has to travel to the other person. You have instruments. Why, if you sit down and think, why is a guitar, for example, as a metaphor, why is the guitar more popular than, for example, a cello? Why do everybody wants to play a guitar or they want to hold a guitar? Or why is in India, why is instruments like the sarod or the tabla or sitar more popular than the veena,
mhm.
if I may say so, or the shanai? Because somewhere something is going right with the instrument, with the performers with the instrument, and somewhere is going wrong with the performer with the instrument. I think sorry, pulling this answer too long, but I just feel even the teachers who are teaching their students certain instruments have to be more open-minded about the instruments' technicalities. They have to change with time in order to get more students. Need to be more friendly with their students.
I think the
In order,
performers do become responsible on the popularity of the instrument. Like, for
yeah,
example, in India, if we talk
absolutely.
about instruments like the Rudra Bean
Mhm.
or the Nadar Swaram, I mean, we have so many instruments. I was actually doing a project in Chennai, and we were looking for another Nadar Swaram player, which is this very ancient, Carnatic instrument. And we found one artist who came, he was like 91 years old. And I mean, magic happened in the
No,
studio.
I just feel that
Yeah,
every instrument needs to come out of their comfort zone. A tabla today would not have been that popular if it was not been associated with drums, with drums in the fusion world. Or a sarod would have not been getting popular if you were not collaborating, for example, with a guitar or a piano, or. So you have to keep modifying yourself. You need to keep coming out of the comfort zone in order to take everything in one sort of spectrum and try to you cannot be in your comfort zone and say, this is my instrument, this is the way it's played, and I don't think I should play it outside the box. That is where the problem starts.
you have to reinvent the journey of the instrument
Yeah.
as well, which only perhaps the performing artists can do.
Yeah, exactly. And I should give a shout out to the Indian Music Experience, which is one of the organizations co-hosting this event. They're a music museum, one of the few music museums in the country in Bangalore, and they have done a lot of work, in sort of presenting the range and depth of Indian music. And I think anybody who can get the opportunity to visit there will to see, some of these instruments that are actually not being. You don't hear them so much, but we just have such a wealth of different instruments in the country. like you said, both from the north and the south of India. But this is a related question. This says, the person is asking, Sarod, unlike the guitar and drums, is not a popular choice to pick up by the younger generations. How do you promote Indian instruments in these times? I mean, perhaps you would disagree with that, but do either of you want to address that?
No, Amit, there's nothing else called promoting an instrument. Either you connect with it or you don't connect with it. I mean, why would I promote a sarod onto a person who doesn't like a sarod and likes a sitar or a guitar? I mean, again, as what Ayaan mentioned, it's for the performer to advertise the instrument. He performs the instrument in such a way that you like, wow, I want to learn this instrument. It can be any instrument, right? So it is the performer's job to popularize the instrument. It is not the instrument's job to publicize itself to other people. You got to do it in such a way that people want to.
Sorry, by the large, I mean, please go ahead.
No, that's okay. No, that's okay.
I'm saying by and large, youngsters do connect more with, when you're in school. I mean, it's very natural to want to be
more
a part
boisterous
of a rock band,
and
and all of that. But I think if you have an interest or a passion to learn, they learn. I think today, Maharashtra, Bengal, even the northern part of India, I think you have way more students of music than you had maybe 40 years ago.
The more opportunities, right?
Yeah.
And more content available online for them to, better
free
themselves.
Content available.
Yeah. Over a click, you have hours and hours of research just available there. We'd go running with one cassette, if we know what that is. One cassette would change our life. That one recording changed our life. But now you have, hours and hours of content available. So they're very blessed, the younger lot, which includes us, by the way. But to have so much content available.
Enough opportunity for you to learn whatever you want to learn these days. Sharon, I'd like you to sort of contribute to this sort of kind of conversation in terms of the whole idea of different instruments appealing to a younger generation. In fact, somebody has asked you a question about how basically whether Western classical music is being encouraged amongst the younger generation in the US. And again, I feel it's a really sort of general question, but also from your own experience, I mean, you choose to become a classical guitarist, when everybody around you was perhaps, wanted to be a rock star, and I'd love to hear your, both your own personal story and also your observations of the present times.
Well, I'm actually an accidental guitarist because I would never have taken up the instrument if our family hadn't gone to live for a year in Italy. My father, being a scientist, was invited to take his sabbatical from the University of Minnesota and be a consultant in Italy on a scientific project. And in the process of doing that, my older brother said he wanted guitar lessons once we got to Italy. And his fantasy was to be the next Elvis Presley, but my parents didn't know that. So they actually found out that there was that time already famous young guitarist from Italy who was commuting from Milano to Varese, where we were living, to teach at the music school. He was already touring in Italy. He had studied with Segovia, and my parents thought, wow, what a great opportunity. Took my brother for the interview. He said, classical? No way, I'm not interested. So I just remember that evening, my parents saying, well, somebody in the family has to study with this guy. This is too great to let pass by. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And I figured if I volunteered to play the guitar, then I wouldn't have to continue my piano lessons and I'd be safe for a little while. So that's how I started. And I actually took to it more as a hobby. And then later, when I had returned back to the United States, I got more serious about it, won a competition, and the award when I was 14 was to perform with the Minnesota Orchestra. And I thought, wow, this is even more exciting, playing for 10,000 people than my real passion at the time, which was being a scientist, launching model rockets into the sky and sending up worms and grasshoppers. So I figured, okay, I'll become a guitarist instead. And that's how it happened. So it was a fluke. It was because we didn't live in the United States at that time. But now I must say that at that time, you could count on one hand the number of universities or conservatories that had a guitar department. Now it's almost all of them in the US. So the instrument has been flourishing. I had the guitar department at the Juilliard School. I created it there in 1989, and I've had students from more than 20 different countries. Many of them have gone on to win major competitions all over the world. In fact, last week, one of my students just won first prize in the Guitar Foundation of America international competition. We'll be touring 50 concerts all over the US in the coming season. The fourth first prize winner I've ever had with the GFA, which is considered really the paradigm of guitar opportunity. So I would say the instrument is flourishing. The music that's being written for it, I've had more than a dozen concerti for guitar and orchestra written for me, and over 80 works of different formats. So it's something that, as both Ayaan and Ayaan have been saying, it's up to the performer to explore the different horizons and the different senses of connection, whether it's with other guitarists and people like Steve Vai I've worked with, or other musicians in different genres, Nancy Wilson from Heart, Joan Baez from the folk world. It's because, in my case, always there's been a genuine organic interest on my part and respect for the other musician and their world and their music, and a desire to become a connection to that. So it has to come from a genuine place. It can't be something artificial. And that kind of immersion and creation will be able to birth all kinds of new ideas and new possibilities.
Yeah.
I'd like to add that I think Sharon started launching the fireworks on stage through the guitar.
Yeah. Just imagine. She could have been she could have been a rocket scientist, but she decided to,
No, like I said, the fireworks happen on stage now.
I'd be zooming to you from the moon right now if I hadn't gone to Italy.
Instead, your performances are transported and out of this world. So I'm just going to squeeze in one last question before we wrap up. This is I think addressed to Ayaan and Ayaan. This is from Ranjit Hoskote. He asks, has the improvised Mohan Veena been at all relevant to your study and experimentation between the Sarod and Guitar, or is it only a technical curiosity now?
Firstly, I want to thank him for asking such a lovely question. Greetings to him. I think the Veena, as he mentioned, is the Indian version of the guitar Veena. Is a modified version, 100%. It's been, I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's some sympathetic strings that have been added onto it, and it sounds beautiful. And there's a bit of a difference, is that it's more of a slide. In the Western world, if I have to define it to the audience, it's more of a slide guitar. So obviously, it's slightly coming closer to the pattern of playing of a sitar and a sarod in terms of speed, I would say, or the glide, or the imitation of the human voice, for example. But it sounds similar. So as a collaboration, if you have to compare, I would like a Western classical guitar, for example, just as a metaphor, more is because it's completely on the other side. It's a different style of playing. Yeah. So there is, it's different. What I'm saying is like playing a tabla with a pakawaj, which is more or less the same pattern as to playing tabla with Western drums. It just takes the other side of the instrument. So for Sarod to play with a Western classical guitar is getting Sarod out of the comfort zone and playing it in a different style to complement a guitar. Whereas with the slide guitar, with the Veena, the modern version Veena, it's more of the same pattern of playing. We can play the same compositions and the same slides and the glides. It's a beautiful instrument, the modern day Veena today, but or the slide guitar. But I feel when you collaborate with an artist, it should be on the other side. Like where you stop, where your limitations start, is where it should begin.
Yes. Yeah. No, thank you so much for that. And thank you to all three of you.
Thank you.
and a privilege to speak with you. And
Thank you. Such a pleasure.
you mentioned a sequel,
Likewise.
and so hopefully that has been some breaking news that hopefully will come
And
true.
we want to come back to Royal Opera House very soon once things get over.
Yes,
Sharon
I
has to
heard.
come to
I
India
heard you
for
guys are
round
starting a
2.
concert, so you know our emails and our numbers.
Yeah, we have to come back to India for round 2 and round 3, God willing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
On that note, I will hand it over to Asad, who will tell us about the sequel to the concerts.
Pleasure
I
talking
was
to you, Amit bhai. Thank you.
I was delighted to hear about the sequel, and hearing Sharon explain why she doesn't shake hands with people. I remembered meeting her backstage at the Opera House, and I thought it was a little different that she did not do it. Now I know the explanation.
A little odd,
But
yes.
yeah, each to his own. But honestly, it's been a very interesting session, and thank you so much for sharing such insights.
Thank you
We've
for
worked
having
with
us.
Ustadji, Ayaan, Aman for years now, and they're always such a pleasure, and as someone mentioned
Oh,
earlier,
thank
humble
you.
to work with. And this is an ongoing journey, as I say. We will connect as we go back to the normal world and plan many special things together, whether it's at the Opera
God
House,
willing, yes.
Avid, and we would obviously be delighted to see Sharon back again in India, and on the stages of the Royal Opera House. And Amit, I mean, thank you so much. Again, Amit, we've also known for many years, and it's great to get people whose work you admire all together on a platform and create these dialogues, which just has been filling the gaps. As we'd like to say, since we can't do this in person now, obviously that will hopefully change in the near future, and we will be doing these discussions and actually having a live lecture demonstration soon for the next edition. But that said, thank you very much, Amit, and thank you for so skillfully moderating the session and for all the effort you've put in to research it. And
And
to our partners.
I'd like to thank even Mr. Asad Lalji, who's up at 4 a.m. right now in
Yeah.
Phoenix, and we are in New York, you're in Mumbai. So this is truly a global
Global.
A
Zoom.
world
This has been,
conversation, a worldly conversation.
yeah,
Speaking
worldly
of global,
conversation.
I just want to say that for me to journey to India was very special because I have practiced transcendental meditation, TM,
Yes.
since I was 17 years old, and to be able to go to the country of its origin and to experience that to me was a very profound opportunity and one that has resonated in many kinds of spiritual ways. So thank you both, Aman and Ayaan, and your father for
Thank
making
you.
it
Thank you.
possible for me to make that journey.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Thank you. And I just want to just thank our partners, the Indian Music Experience Museum. And, Amit already mentioned it's a wonderful new institution that has been started. And Mansi is doing such a great job. And they've been always so supportive and collaborating with us. Furtado's another wonderful patron of the performing arts world and always ready to partner and collaborate with us. And most of all, to our audiences, I mean, this is the third edition in this series. We have one more planned, and then who knows, we'd like to do it in person. But at Avid, we have many more interesting programs. Our next one is a series called Cultural Capitals, which will be in its 6th edition, which is next Thursday on the 18th of October, where we'll be talking about the city of Kohima, which is in Nagaland, and followed by the legacies of the Thespian past, looking at the theatre at the Royal Opera House. To find out more, just check out our website or stalk us on social media. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and remember that learning never stops. Thank you very much, and have a good
Thank
evening,
you.
good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.